So I grew up hearing the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And that's such a lie. Like, it's an incredible lie, because the reality is that words can be extremely hurtful. They can do a number of things in our own psyche and in our own lives to just kind of stall us out from growing in the way we want to, or from moving in the direction God would have us to move. But something else about our words is that they can be used to harm others when we're not even talking to them. It's a matter of talking about them or not being willing to talk directly to them about certain things. In Proverbs 26, verses 20 through 22, it says, "Without wood a fire goes out, without a gossip a quarrel dies down. As charcoal to embers and as wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome person for kindling strife. The words of a gossip are like choice morsels, they go down to the inmost parts." I think one of the most important things to remember in wisdom is that you and I, we have words that we get to choose. And gossip is such a dangerous thing. If you can't speak positively about someone, you probably ought to not speak about them at all. More importantly, if you're going to talk about someone, I learned this years ago. We were sitting in the back room of a Sonic drive-in where I was working, and we were talking about another employee, and one of the managers came back and said, "Hey, something to keep in mind," just as he had been listening to us for a little bit. He said, if you're going to surround yourself with people who are going to talk about other people while they're not there, you can be guaranteed they're going to be talking about you when you're not. And I thought to myself, man, that is so important to remember, because this idea of the words of a gossip are like choice morsels, meaning they go down to the innermost parts of the person, means that they just linger and they stick. And the problem with gossip is that it just never goes away. You and I have to work really hard to completely avoid it. And I think that's what the proverb is teaching us today. God bless you. Go in peace. So one of the most important things about life is that we be surrounded by people that we can be friends with, that we can trust and be a part of. The Bible's filled with passages of friendships, of people who forged through because they had someone else there to depend on and to help them in life situations. And I think a lot of times we don't take the value of friendships as well as what we ought to. The truth is, we're only going to have a handful of friendships in our lives anyway, because friendship requires vulnerability, it requires availability, it requires the willingness to lean into life for the sake of somebody else. And we can't all do that very well with a lot of people, but we can do it with one or two. Proverbs 27 talks about this. It says in verse 6, "Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses." Verse 9 of chapter 27 says, "Perfume and incense bring joy to the heart, and pleasantness of a friend springs from their heartfelt advice." Proverbs 26:17 says this, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." The key to living a full life is to having God as the center of what you're doing, to live in light of the fact that this whole life is a gift, and to have someone you can share that gift with. And in some contexts, it may be a spouse, it may be just a long-term friend that you've had. Other times you may develop these friendships over years. But again, nothing replaces the importance of having friendship in our lives. And the proverb today teaches us, reminds us of the depth of that need. God bless you. Go in peace. One of the most important things we can do in our daily life is just to stay connected with the Lord. And it's for a variety of different reasons. The most obvious is that He wants to stay connected with us. The Lord knows what our paths really do look like. And so by staying connected to Him, we can stay where He's at. And a lot of times we forget that. And other times in our lives when we're finding ourselves up against a wall or up against some difficulty, it's usually in those moments we either realize how committed we've been in our time with the Lord, or how much more of that we really do need. And sometimes, even if we've been super committed, we can find we still need more of it. So our proverb for today is Proverbs 28, and reads this way: "Blessed is the one who always trembles before the Lord, but whoever hardens their heart falls into trouble." And Proverbs 28:18 says, "The one whose walk is blameless is kept safe, but the one whose ways are perverse will fall into the pit." I like this passage because it reminds us that we have to stand in awe of the Lord. Trembling is not necessarily the sense in which we're terrified in a corner awaiting some grand punishment. It has more to do with the awe of who God is. But I love that the psalmist, or the author of Proverbs, says that those whose walk is blameless. This word means to have integrity. It doesn't mean to be perfect. It means that in our lives we do things from the perspective of, am I doing this as a man or a woman of integrity? And I submit to you that the follower of Christ can only do that if their relationship is connected to the Lord in such a way that they allow Him to examine their lives. Perhaps today that's something that you and I need to do, is just to let the God of creation, as we tremble before Him, let Him examine our lives and trust Him for what He intends with our lives to do. God bless you. Go in peace. When I was younger, my mom would discipline me in certain ways so as to kind of put me on the right path. There were times that discipline was, in some ways, just a reprimand. It was a way of saying, Mike, I need you to reconsider this, or I need you to look at it this way, because down the road, you're going to see things from a different angle. Sometimes that came as the result of some physical punishment. Maybe it was a spanking, maybe it was just grounding, and I was having to really examine my choices and what I had done and where I had been. And my mom and my dad, they were all part of that process. But also, as I grew up, there were other people who were responsible in some ways for helping me in those ways of laying out the plan for life. And sometimes we're afraid that discipline is always got to be a matter of harshness or punishment, when in reality, discipline is just an exercise. And it's just a way of directing our steps in the proper way. The author of Proverbs, speaking to young men who are most likely going to be having children, and were children at some point in their lives, in Proverbs 29:15, there's a whole section that says, a rod and a reprimand impart wisdom, but a child left undisciplined disgraces its mother. When the wicked thrive, so does sin, but the righteous will see their downfall. Discipline your children, and they will give you peace. They will bring you the delights you desire. Where there is no revelation, people cast off restraint, but blessed is the one who heeds wisdom's instruction. And I think that this is really important because, again, in our lives we need discipline. And it isn't always a matter of the harshness of it, but sometimes discipline requires some pain. It requires something that says, I need you to pay attention to what you're doing. And other times discipline is just a matter of education, of genuinely walking through and gaining intelligence for living daily lives. The reason why I think this is so important is because in Proverbs 29:25 it says this, fear of man will prove to be a snare. If we're always trying to impress other people, we're always trying to get it on their good side, eventually that will provide a snare for us. But whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. The heart of discipline goes back to trusting in the Lord and trusting what He's calling us toward, because His plans are so much greater than ours. Hopefully today, maybe you can evaluate the idea of how discipline in your life has changed things and how it is it's helped you to move forward. God bless you. Go in peace. You know, one of the things about life is that we have these requests of God that are honest requests, and if we will evaluate them, we'll see that God is really working in our lives. But sometimes we have to ask honest requests of Him. And we have to evaluate what it means to really think in terms of what God wants the most for our lives. Today, in Proverbs chapter 30, it is actually one of what's known as the Proverbs of Agar. We don't know a lot about Agar, but we do know that these are some really great thoughts that he has. And he ultimately has several lists of things that he asks God for. But the one thing that stands out to me comes in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 7 through 9. He says, 2 things I ask of you, Lord. Do not refuse me before I die. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. I absolutely love this passage because I think it puts it in terms of, God, don't give me too much that I might think more of myself than I should. And don't give me too little that I might think less of others because of it and steal from them. And instead, give me exactly what I need and help me to be sustained on that and grateful for it. It's a great prayer, and it even surfaces later on in the gospel according to Matthew when Jesus is teaching his disciples to pray for their daily bread. So maybe today the proverb will help you to better understand the idea of how to trust God with your prayers. Just be honest with Him and say, God, these are the things that I want, but the biggest thing I want is to honor you with my life. God bless you. Go in peace. So the core of Proverbs is that life is at a fork in the road. And you have to make wise choices or you have to make foolish choices, but you have to make the choices. You don't get to be indifferent. And our challenge in life is to accept that as we're at that point, God doesn't want us to fail. And God doesn't want us to have a life that's unfulfilled. Instead, He wants us to know He has a great plan. We have to make proper choices. But one of the great things about Proverbs is that it also demands that we take care of other people, that we acknowledge that our choices are not just about us. It's not just about moving through life and making the best possible options for ourselves. Everything we do has a ripple effect on other people. There's a great proverb today in Proverbs 31 as the King Lemuel is being instructed by his mother. And she's telling him a number of things. And one of the things she says to him in verses 8 and 9 is, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. Undoubtedly, Lemuel's mother knew that he was a king and it was his job to protect and give opportunity for all of those who would come before him. But it's also an instruction for us, especially the follower of Christ, who knows that every one of us do not deserve salvation. We do not deserve a second chance. We do not deserve the benefit of the doubt, and yet we get that. And because we get that, it's our responsibility to make sure that everybody else has the same opportunity. So maybe today, Proverbs 31 will remind you of the importance of God's call in our lives to speak up for those who have no voice, to become their voice, and to sing the song they desperately need heard in the world around them. God bless you. Go in peace.